Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Robin Ayoub, and this is the Localization Fireside Chat, episode 216 today, and this is a good one. My guest is Omid Pakseresht, and founder and CEO of GOODFOLIO, and we are going deep on this one today for the most important conversation in the enterprise that's taking place right now, and why we're going to get into why AI keeps failing to get out of the pilot stage in what it takes actually to build systems that run in production. If you are in the language service industry or localization or any industry for that matter, and trying to make AI work inside real workflow, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Most organization has done an AI pilot. Many have done 10 of them or more, and yet remarkably few have something running in production. That actually change how work gets done. So there's a difference between actually putting AI in the workplace and actually making it work in the real production environment. And that creates a gap between what actually AI can do and what actually it's doing now. And Omid, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being part of this conversation today. I can't wait to get to know you personally, get to know what you do and what GOODFOLIO, your company, does. And before we ask you the introduction question, I want to mention to the audience that Omid is located in the UK, in London. He went to Oxford. He started a company. So we're talking to a real authoritative voice in the AI deployment today. And I can't wait to get that conversation on the go. Omid, as everybody we say, we get everybody here, we give them the simple question first, I guess. The first question is, what is your story? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you get started? Where are you from? And how did GOODFOLIO got started as well? So,
amazing. Thanks, Robin. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this one. Yeah, my story, I am a first-generation Iranian who moved to the UK when I was 16. Went to Oxford, studied mathematics, worked in finance as a quantitative analyst back in 2013-14. That's where I was first started working deeply with data and building, let's say, simulation engines and little widgets at a time. So I went into entrepreneurship. I focused on AI for the last 10 years or so, enterprise AI in particular. I worked with two different startups that grew to that sort of like 30 to 50 people mark in commercialization as the first product hire. So sitting at that intersection of, let's say, product, market, and technology. And then started GOODFOLIO with my older brother, actually, who is also from the AI world, but he came at it from a very much the other direction, which was academia and then enterprise AI deployments. So we started GOODFOLIO 4 or 5 years ago with this idea of doing something good with AI. That's what we're trying to do.
and can we say it's a family business then?
No, I think there are another few dozen people that would disagree with that internally in the organization. But yeah, I mean, it's been it's not every day that you get to start a business with your brother, and we are super aligned and do a good job of working with each other. That's a real pleasure. So I can't deny that. But yeah, we are much more like a traditional tech company than a family.
Great. Startup. Excellent. Yeah. Now let's get to know you a little bit better on your history and your story, how you got here. As I was doing the research, I found out like you arrived in the UK at 10 with broken English, and I'm no strange to being an immigrant. I landed in Canada, at a teenage years, barely spoke any English at all. And I spoke French and Arabic at the time. I'm from Lebanon originally. What was the formative experience in those early years when you landed in the UK that shaped how you think about building things? As we all move from one location to another, it's a major impact on a human life.
That's it's a really good question. I mean, I think a couple of things come to mind straight away. One of them is that the language and cultural change is a big part of it. Being a teenager and not sort of having the same tools as everyone else to get on socially and otherwise. It does really teach you that the only way to get by is to actually just try and be wrong a lot and be okay with being wrong a lot. I remember the first few weeks, I was just so worried about sort of like what I say and how I pronounce stuff. And then once you get over that phase, and that gives you a certain level of, let's say, ability to experiment and learn and adapt. The other aspect of it, and that's deep in the DNA of GOODFOLIO at the moment in business that we have, is that your understanding of how different parts of the world are and how they function and how societies function and how businesses even function, it really grows very, very quickly. And that view of the sort of the differences and the nuances of how societies work, how economies work, that gives, I believe, entrepreneurs, particularly if you're trying to do something global, a distinct advantage. So for that, I'm thankful as well.
So when did the entrepreneurial instinct kicked in, Omid?
This is a part of the journey that I don't really talk about too much. It's a pre-AI world. At school, actually. So it's a very, very.
Were you encouraged at school or like a lot of people go to school to get a job? How did that switch?
No, just a bit of a mindset thing. I mean, I like experimenting and learning and providing value and all of the stuff that goes with, I would say, aspects of sort of creativity and solving puzzles, but also trying to kind of understand what people want and what works and so on. So there was that's my way of sort of like creativity coming out, let's say. But after university, I spent after college, actually, before university, I spent 2-3 years building small businesses, actually, which was really good fun. Anything from importing goods to fixing computers to there's lots of different stuff I experimented with.
We all went through the journey, Omid. We all went through the journey.
And it was it's a good time. I lean on that quite a lot because it kind of, again, it's one of those experiences of an 18-year-old just arrived in a different country in the last few years, trying to figure out how things work, and you're just trying to setting up a business. For small businesses, they weren't massive. Some of them more successful than others, but that really kind of that changes how scared you are about trying things. So that was a good thing.
No, you studied at Oxford, and you took quantitative finance, record currency management. What does that mean? I never heard of that discipline before.
It's a good question. I mean, I think it's what you're effectively trying to use data to drive certain outcomes and analysis and so on with relation to financial markets. I mean, I think I can give you examples of the type of work that we used to do, or I used to do as a quant, although that world has moved on in a completely very, very fascinating way, which we could do a whole different episode on. But at the time, you would kind of like, get data feeds, manipulate them, put them into a program that analyzes the risk of running a certain trade in a specific, financial instrument and so on, price options using simulations, trying to analyze trends, very, very early days of machine learning as well. Although at the time that felt way too forward thinking to ever try to do
that was the moonshot back then, right?
I mean, that's just a part of the reason. It's I don't think I was built for financial services, to be honest, as that moves very, very slowly, and I like moving quite quickly. So that was, but again, that's a part of the formative years, I would say.
So talk to me a little bit about TransferGuru. That was your first company that you put together. And it was dealing with international money transfer and comparison platform. So you compare how money gets transferred between countries and which platform does better, I'm assuming. How did that company come about and what happened to it?
I'm quite I think, quite driven by why rather than what. So I think at the time, again, this was part of the sort of challenges I'd faced myself. There was a distinct gap between sort of information gap and automation gap that was resulting in, I don't know, 5 to 7% average cost of transferring money from one country to another, and that disproportionately affected, let's say, just normal individuals and diaspora and small businesses trying to kind of do global stuff. So that really hit home. I thought at a time, perhaps somewhat naively, I knew a little bit about entrepreneurship, knew a little bit about FX, knew a little bit about, let's say, data in particular. So just got on my horse and started building. But what I didn't really know, and that was quite important in how I think now, was that building a tech business and a fast growth business is a fundamentally different framework to a small business. And I learned a lot from that. Learned a lot from that experience. That turned into a bit of a, I would say, lifestyle business. So I moved on. I moved on and worked with much more experienced founders in the technology and AI space, as I mentioned earlier. And that was a real privilege as well. But good learning experience wasn't exactly the most successful thing, but it was okay. It was okay.
I mean, for all everybody I talk to on this podcast, everybody says, it doesn't need to be successful the first time you try something, as long as you're trying and you're learning from the experience that you've had. The concept, I love the idea that you just mentioned, Omid, starting with the why. We talk a lot about the why and what problem are we trying to solve. And this is those moments where validating, is there a problem out there like you're trying to solve, or is it in somebody's mind it's a problem, but maybe for the masses, maybe for the millions of people that they're probably going to end up using a specific app or specific technology or tool or whatever you're trying to create, may not be a problem. Maybe a problem in our eyes only, but sensing that out there. How do you, and you've learned through this process, I'm assuming. So how do you take it from, I think it's a problem, to validating its real problem out there? What is that bridge like?
That's that's a really, really good question. Still learning. I think I will forever be learning on that one. I think there are different layers of the why. There are systemic things that are systemic and thematic things that are wrong, that bother you, that you want to build towards. That is both, is about your values and your sort of assessment of the world and where it's going, as much as it is sort of other sort of external factors of it. But then there is actually, how does that translate to, as you said, people's day-to-day? Do other people care about this the same way that you do? How does that then turn into actually a micro problem or a job that someone needs to get done that they don't, or they can't, or they do it more expensively? And that distinction is something I got wrong the first few times, right? When we started building GOODFOLIO, we started with this premise that, okay, we're gonna allow for that experimentation and for that sort of being wrong to happen really, really quickly, and being able to iterate and creating an environment where that can actually happen. And that's what we've done. I think that's really the only way you can think about it. Being curious, thinking about it, testing assumptions, putting stuff out there, and being willing to accept that you can be wrong, and that's okay, and that's actually a good thing. That's hard. It's really, really hard psychologically, but that's the kind of the mindset you need.
So it becomes a natural laboratory for experimentation, and see what
Yeah,
happens from the engineering point of view and what you come up with from solutions. That's what would be
yeah,
the marketable ones, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's quite important to kind of think about the systems as a whole as well. I mean, particularly when it comes to enterprise,
Mm.
you're not, there's a whole value chain. There's
Hmm.
multiple stakeholders with different priorities. There is incentives, misalignments. There's just there's so much reality of how things function that you face as soon as you try to conceive of a product that there's not, I always say there's no point sitting in the office and trying to think about it, but virtually, of course, sometimes, but you need to get out there and get your hands dirty, and you will find things that you didn't know before.
Now, let's move on a little bit and talk about GoodFolio for the audience. We're talking about a company that is structured as an AI venture studio with shared infrastructure across multiple products. If I get any of these wrong, Omid, just please correct me. FinSpector, financial compliance; Goodmora, strategic intelligence; Libera, retail AI in emerging markets; GoodMind, neurological diagnostics. Launched in 2023 and crossed £1 million revenue. Just closed a pre-seed 157 of target with 100 plus investors. Leadership team draws from Nestle, Unilever, Bloomberg, DHL, Nickelodeon, and the FCA. Did I get that right?
I think that's about 90% accurate. Yeah, yeah, that's very,
I
very
take
good.
90%. That's a good score.
Yeah, that's good. As I said, it is good enough. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
now
absolutely.
the question would become is after this is what does this mean in practice for a client when they engage with GoodFolio versus a single product AI vendor? And if you don't mind, just give us a bit of an overall view of GoodFolio relationship structure and how do you engage with customers? I guess that's what the question would be at this point.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the world that we're in at the moment, it lends itself well to actually new business models as well. And that's what we are trying to think about, and we're trying to make sure that we are actually fit for today and for tomorrow. I think what happens is that we have a series of point solutions where they can solve a really, really complex, specific, somewhat boring sometimes part of enterprise workflows. And they're structured. They can be structured as we call them ventures. Sometimes they have their own brand. They effectively can be and are sold as standalone propositions that solve one part of workflow, one system within one type of enterprise. Increasingly, a lot of these sort of solutions that we are building, or the products that we're building, require similar frameworks, right? Require certain things for them to actually work in production, right? That's one thing that started happening, and that's things around effectively the operating system, right? How they productionize within a company itself. The model governance around it, the data rights associated with it, the user base, incentives, the actual infrastructure or the application layer that sits within those companies. And increasingly, also we go with a point solution within an engagement, and they ask for, well, you're solving one problem, but I have another 10. Right. And you mentioned this like earlier on, where there is, they've also tried another 10 AI pilots that have all failed or not scaled. So this idea that you can become a strategic partner to enterprises, we've actually effectively been pushed in that direction as much as we wanted to go in that direction, right? So now we have the capabilities. We have a platform layer where it enables us to build improve the products that we have, but also build specific custom solutions and products for enterprises themselves. And we're improving an increasing number of sort of point solutions or ventures that we have as well. The benefit to the client being its compounded capabilities, right? This is systems that if you have multiple of them and they talk to each other, they learn from each other, and they can work better with the context that they have about your business and the problems that you have. That's the main benefit. And the second benefit is that, well, actually, it's the team, it's the alignment, it's the partnership structure that we have in place with these engagements. So that's a slightly different type of engagement that we go into. We're trying to solve multiple problems. Sometimes we're speaking to the same company. Obviously, internally, we know that we're doing that, and they know that we're doing that, but we're speaking to different teams about different parts of their workflows. And we think that gives us a real advantage in terms of being able to actually help them and identify parts of their challenges and ambitions that they may not have even noticed themselves.
Now, in the market out there, and I'd like your opinion on this one, it's flooded with people who are trying to provide solutions, as you know, and you're in the business, you know more than I do. Many people are offering many ways, widgets, apps, develop this, develop the other thing. And customers are becoming, in my opinion, a little numb. You know what I mean by that? A little jaded to these pitches, to these offers, etc. What, resonates most with your customers when it comes to GOODFOLIO, for instance? Why would they listen to a GOODFOLIO pitch? And I'm assuming here the whole partnership versus client relationship, but I would like to hear what resonates more from your side versus somebody else's, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think you're right. I think there's a bit of fatigue from just hearing the word AI, but I think part of that fatigue is also related to stuff not working. Right, like whereas I've spent time and energy.
Oh yeah, I hear it all the time. We tried it; it didn't work. See ya.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we really lean into that. I mean, we have propositions. We have point solutions that are working, and that acts as the sort of the biggest proof point that, okay, these are people that we can actually work with. So we really focus on making it work for them, and then expanding from there, which we're doing more things for them. So we're not, this idea of we're not everything to everyone, right? We're trying to be everything to some people, and that's it's a slightly different thing. I think that gives us an advantage. I think for us, what we do see working is actually being able to help them in their journey of how they actually think about this as well. And that's whether that's sort of structured or part of the process is, okay, what are you actually trying to do? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? And using some of the experiences that we've had ourselves in actually innovating within those organizations as well, because it is ultimately about systems, about new ways of working. I think one final component I would say, which is very important, I think, both philosophically and also in how we actually sort of grow, is growth, right? I think there is a lot of focus on really sort of lightweight solutions that try to do optimization and do a little bit of efficiency gain. That's never really the game that we want to be in. I mean, it doesn't excite people. And in my experience, even when there is that drive sort of like top down in an enterprise, you get into the weeds of it and people don't really want it, right? They don't get behind it and the project fails anyway. So making sure that you're kind of like going into the conversation and going into the engagement and whichever part of the journey that you're at with that engagement, focused on, right, this is not just about some efficiency gain or it's not making people redundant or anything like that. This is actually about how do we use these new capabilities that's available to you to grow your business or grow a department or you grow your KPI, and helping them think through that journey and being able to communicate that. Yeah, that works to the benefit of everyone.
No, I did a presentation not too long ago. I run a networking event on Fridays, 9 a.m. Eastern, and it's called the AI Exchange, where I've got a lot of global people that come in from various parts of the world, and we talk about the latest in artificial intelligence. What are we observing out there? It's just a thought sharing kind of a group. And I did a presentation on the same topic that you're talking about, where you've got old processes. Most businesses, most enterprises, they've got processes that they currently have in place. And what we're trying to do with what they are trying to do and what they're thinking, imagining they're trying to do is with AI is to take AI and bolt it on top of an old process or process that they currently have, whatever the process is, manipulating spreadsheets, extracting data from a variety of sources, currently cut and paste, move things around. And I'm just using that as a rudimentary example. And so we're taking AI and layer it on top of a process that currently it's been done that way for many years. Why change it? Meanwhile, the capability that AI is giving us right now, and that's my own humble opinion, is that maybe the processes that we're currently using for many, many years, and we never bothered taking a look at these processes, we don't need those processes anymore. Maybe there's an opportunity here to remove the old processes and put a brand new ways of doing things. Is that something that you're noticing out there with your customers? Are they willing to take a look at what's not working in the current process and venture into a new way of doing things?
I can say for certain that when they are willing, it works a lot better both sides. And that is, I'm seeing an increasing sort of number of engagements and conversations where that way of thinking that you just described, it is actually becoming more sort of understood. And I'm really, really enjoying this phase, actually. It is something that, let's say, if you can think of a world, I mean, let's do an example. One of the ventures that we have, and we have like a series of like different types of engagements at different stages of maturity. But you have in financial services, you have this need to approve content, everything that goes out. You and I speaking, if we were a regulated firm, this would need to get approved by compliance before it gets promoted in the world. So that creates this system of compliance departments always acted as a gateway. And sometimes this is sort of an archaic process of email back and forth. Sometimes there are sort of portals that deal with that. There's registers that deal with that, etc. And there is so there's a lot of sort of conversations we were having a year or two ago, people saying, okay, now actually I would love my compliance department who's overworked to be able to review more stuff. That's one, it's one layer of it, and it's helpful in using AI. But what's actually happening is that because of AI's capabilities, you can produce a whole lot more stuff. Right, so this system that you create in value and engagement, it just moved from the bottleneck being, let's say, the content production and creativity, to the bottleneck being like how much the compliance department can actually approve. Right, so what this is very different to what you were able to do with technology before. Like you've literally fundamentally lifted one bottleneck and you've just created a backlog somewhere else. So you really need to think then, okay, if that's what I'm doing, then why can't I just embed compliance at the first step? So this becomes a system that just flows much, much more naturally. And that's starting to happen in a lot of conversations, and they're starting to sort of they're starting to think about it, and I've got parallels in lots of different industries that do exactly that thing. It's that shift from being able to think about it as a tool, because part of it is that people are seeing the ability and the new ways of things happening, and that curiosity and that willingness to learn, it helps as well. So yeah, it's something that started happening that's really positive, and I really enjoy this phase. But it's the difference between tools and systems that's as a sort of the fundamental part. That's
Correct.
that needs
Absolutely.
to be
Now,
understood.
GOODFOLIO, my understanding, and just correct me if I'm wrong on this one, is you refer to something called shared infrastructure layer. What does that mean?
It is actually something that we built effectively in stealth for ourselves, and now it's becoming increasingly important for the strategic partners as well. So if you think about I would call it an operating system, or a platform for actually being able to build products, right? A product that builds products sounds a little bit too forward in the world, but that's effectively where we go. So the shared infrastructure, certain bits of any AI system are the same, right? You need model governance around it, right? You need deployment tools around it. You need workflow collaboration around it. You need the ability to actually be able to create new custom parts of the solution. And some of this is more aspirational, maybe today, but it is now starting to become possible with AI's capabilities. So a good AI system has certain characteristics, and those characteristics we call the operating system. Then there are, let's say, specific parts where it does need very, very domain relevance, or unique data or domain knowledge to create a compliance product or to create a retail product, etc. So those we call the point solutions or the ventures, and everything else that's required for the operating system or for creating a product or deploying AI systems, we call the platform or the shared infrastructure.
Now, for the audience, GOODFOLIO have FinSpector in I'm assuming it's an application inside the financial compliance. Good for strategic intelligence, Libera for retail AI in emerging market, and GoodMind in neurological diagnostics. Very different domains. That's what I noticed when I went through this. Like, they're not in the same industry sector. They're various, if you would call them various industry sector, but there must be a unifying sort of a principle that allows one team to operate across all of them. Can you speak to perhaps all these applications, and then what is the unique about them, and what is the unifying platform around them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's certain industries and domains that have similar characteristics. So we don't really think about industries in the traditional way. We think about where you have really complex workflows, and where your workflows are typically high risk or regulated. So that's the kind of the overlapping theme in terms of the type of proposition that we look at and type of organization that we work with. In terms of sort of capabilities for us, then it matches that. So we are really quite excited about vision capabilities. We think that's heavily underutilized, and we have sort of a speciality in that. We do think, like, all of the stuff that we just described, they do need very, very unique, very strong sort of foundations or infrastructure foundations for deploying AI solutions. That's the other side of it. That's both from data management side to model governance. And last but not least, we think actually to make that stuff work, you need deep domain knowledge or unique proprietary data, or both of those things. And that's the unique part of it that sits within each of these propositions. The rest of it is to put perhaps a little bit too wishfully, pretty much the same.
Yeah. Now, just for the audience, FinSpector won a Greater London Enterprise Award, and that was, congratulations on this one. That was pretty good. And so it's a pretty intense product. If it won the Greater London Enterprise Award, that's pretty prestigious award in my opinion. And so, how did you enter a contest? How did that get selected?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think there's actually been, thank you for bringing that up. There's been a few different little competitions that Deaf Inspector gets to. I'm going to say something that is, yeah, a little bit provocative, but I think, yeah, prizes, they should come and they're nice validation, but being able to actually sit in a meeting room with a client or sit in a virtual meeting room with a client and you're actually solving a problem for them and they are rolling out the solution to more people. Yeah, to us, there's nothing more satisfying than that, and that's the exciting part of the journey that Inspector is on at the moment.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You also, I want to talk a little bit about the funding mechanism they've used. You've just raised £500,000 on Republic Europe, hitting 157% of your target, with more than 100 investors. In my opinion, I need to ask this question, which is evident question or obvious question. Why crowdfunding versus institutional VCs?
It's a very good question. It's a combination of two things. One of them is that, and I'm not ruling out going after institutional VCs at some point in our journey. But at this point in time, one, we do think the type of proposition that we're building and the type of, let's say, multi-product platform proposition that we're working on, we do need all the advice and input in the community that we can get to help us succeed. So that's being able to engage a wider group of people, wider network of people through equity crowdfunding has already had benefits for us. I mean, last few months we've had advisors, hires, intros, you name it, everything coming out of that. That's really, really positive for us. Not to say the VC doesn't do that, but that's not what we are optimizing for at the moment. Second part is that it's again a little bit of a values-driven thing for the leadership. There is a formula for VCs that pushes you in certain directions, and I don't think for what we're trying to do, and I don't think for what applied AI needs at the moment, that formula is a good fit anymore. That's starting to change in the VC world as well. But that's a sort of building a multi-product enterprise solution business. It's they wouldn't know where to put it, right? So is this is this in this industry or in that industry? And I mean, obviously, I'm connected enough to the VCs to have these conversations as well, but there's not an immediate fit at the moment or as it stands. So that's what, there's a lot more capital in the world than just VC capital. So that's kind of what we are working towards.
And now let's, if you don't mind, and thanks for the other answer, I appreciate it. Omid, let's move on a little bit and talk a little bit about the gap between pilot to production. A lot of people do pilots, but they rarely or seldomly get into a really scalable production environment. And I guess from my understanding, based on the research I've done, is the core thesis here is the problem is not in the model, it is in the surrounding systems, workflows, incentives, governance, and adoption that affects adoption, obviously. And I've done a lot of podcasts on this one. I'm reminded by the chief data scientist podcast I've done with for a financial company, financial institution in the U.S. It's on the channel. People can download it. And I was asking, like, how do you get the adoption rate up? Because everybody needs to get on board at some point. Yeah, you can send a memo out, and there's many research out there that says staff can sabotage something they don't like, or they don't approve, or they don't want to be part of. You have to bring them along. You have to incentivize them, etc. So, in your experience, what specifically breaks down between a successful proof of concept and an AI system that actually runs in production? Like, what are you noticing the first thing that goes wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really hit the nail on with that example. It is pretty much exactly that. I think, first of all, uh, it's shifting a little bit, but typically an AI system would get passed to the data science team. And I say that as someone who comes from that world, right? It is not a data science problem. It definitely isn't a data science problem anymore, even if it was at some point, right? There are very, very few type of AI systems at the moment being created within enterprise where the gap in the quality of the model is the reason they can't go live, right? There's definitely models that are either good enough or they can be retrained or even trained at a reasonable cost to be good enough to build that system. So as soon as you frame it as let's put this in the data science team, that becomes a research exercise, or that becomes an insight exercise, and
It's
not
an IT
something
problem
that
now.
it's an IT problem. Yes, yes, equivalent of that, right? It doesn't become something that's part of the processes or part of the new system of working. And as we described it earlier, that is where the biggest gain from AI can actually come from, right? Is actually being able to do stuff in a different way, in a better way, in a in a way that actually enables the growth and it lets people do the things that they're good at, right? That's the benefit. That's not a data science problem. So that's the first, like, sort of like framing it as a data science problem. That's something that can go wrong very, very quickly, because then you build a demo, really good, it's impressive. Yes, it can detect risk with X, Y, and Z, or it can detect X, Y, and Z product, but you've not really thought about how that's going to get rolled out. The second part is really, to me at least, is having the people that are going to be using that system in the room incentivized to actually want to use that system to start with. So the sooner that you can involve the people that are interacting with the system, the better. If this is a system or a pilot that goes and runs somewhere in isolation, you come back and try to impose that and try to get adoption. In my experience, it doesn't really work, because you don't know what that person who's gonna, as you said, block it or not use it actually wanted from this, and how that's going to affect their job. And ultimately, it's their job that matters. So that's the second thing. I think then it comes to trust, right? Like, how do you actually, in a particularly in the regulated environments or big enterprise, so how do you actually build trust in an AI system? And that's about actually having capabilities, the governance layer that sits around data. I always use this example of, if you just started hiring and you start hiring enough, you go and set up an accounting department, you go and set up a HR department, and you have all of this sort of like internal processes going on that deals with how do you manage and service and support the team. If you're doing that with AI and you're not thinking about the equivalent of that for your organization, that is another reason that it kind of it doesn't really scale, even if it works once or twice. That's
I mean, we live in a world right now that you talk about a trust, that everybody's worried about losing their jobs because of AI, right? So, I mean, and here we're talking about bringing these people along to implement something that it's probably going to end up terminating some of their jobs. There was a McKinsey statistics or study that I posted a little bit about it on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, where it says most millennials right now are sabotaging on purpose AI deployment because they're worried about their jobs. Now, I mean, there's many concerns out there. There's many concerns. I mean, people could get hit by a lightning or whatever the case may be, but it's better. In my opinion, the genie's out of the bottle. Technology is here to stay. It's not going to go away. We have to, and if even, it's like trying to block the flood of water in some cases. It will still find a way to your basement. I don't know how, but they still find a way down there. The question is, do we deal with this in a logical, methodical way, learn from it, learn how to behave with it or how to work with it, learn how to make us better as employees, as a human, and to do a better job with the aid of these processes or these tools? Are you facing some of that out there?
Yeah, for sure. And that is, I mean, through learning as much as everything and everything else and trial. We did want to build good AI, right? That was the premise that we wanted to start with, and we're still sticking with that. I think you're spot on. There is a little bit of a concern of yeah, incentives comes into it. Why should I actually do this? I've heard this firsthand multiple times. I'm not actually going to build something that or help build something that's going to replace me. Having said that, I think there is a little bit of enablement and education that we need to do, or at least we can do around the fact that, well, most of value from AI is not going to come from the efficiency in replacing job. Most of it is going to come from, we're so far away from fully utilizing that, by the way, like percentage point at best, right?
Okay.
Most of it is going to come from the growth. So you put the focus of the conversation, you put the focus of the pilots, you put the focus of the strategy with AI on efficiency gains. That's already, maybe you can go some way, but it can't go very far. And that's what creates the resentment, right? If you can actually energize an organization into looking at new areas, looking at new ways of doing things, looking at using AI as an enabler rather than a replacement,
Mm-hmm.
that's that to me is the real focus that sometimes is missing.
Now, you mentioned that earlier, and I'd love to dig a little bit further into it. Now, from my observation, and I think I just noticed that in your conversation earlier, the word governance. Every time there is an AI project and the word governance comes out, it's like we're sending the AI project to what they call the IT jailhouse. You know, we're gonna put. It's like another way of icing or shelving the AI project. What is your framework for thinking about governance in a way that does not stall the deployment, but also not expose the client to unacceptable risks?
Mm, yeah. I think for us, governance is a capability rather than a process, right? That's the best way to think about it. And this is not a new thing to AI, as you said. This is if you think about it as a gateway, then it's never going to pass. But if you think about it as a fundamental infrastructure that you have in place, if you're scaling AI, you really need to understand what it's doing, why, ideally to some degree, why it's doing it, and if it starts doing different things, right? That those are sort of some principles that you can at least have in place to start building trust in what it is doing and what it's going to be doing. So governance to us is not about the gateway. It's about what builds comfort, what builds monitoring, what builds kind of increasing trust in what the system is doing, and what gives you the ability to yeah, turn it on and off, scale it up and scale it down. That's the kind of the base principle.
Now, when we're talking about governance, specifically in the financial sector, it must be like a big deal. Like, I mean, you're talking about like a lot of information. You probably don't want that information to end up in some other models and being used in training, etc. And so, which brings me to the question: are these tools installed on premise, in the cloud, behind a firewall? What is the logical way of deploying these things?
I think that really, to give the easy answer way out, really depends on the solution and what you're trying to do. We do on-cloud deployments unique to the customer. We do multi-tenant infrastructures as well, where we isolate people's organizations' data separately from others. really depends on the solution. Like if you're looking at something like promotions, right? Promotions go out in the world, everyone sees them, right? So that's not, yes, it's important to have certain frameworks in place, and how that integrates with the rest of your systems are important, but the actual sort of output is effectively something that the public is going to see anyway. Now, I think it's really important to kind of separate, let's say, your learnings and the data that belongs to you from what goes in the model. And I don't think, I think the, let's say, ML infrastructure that's out there at the moment, there's no excuse for an AI tool not to be able to do that, right? Your learnings.
I mean, you are in Europe. I mean, GDPR must be like everywhere in your world.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's
I
a
mean,
concern, I'm assuming.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is, and we never really have we never really have products that deal with personal data. That's the first part of it. The second part of it is that we try to, yeah, use the sort of the best in class security available. And the third part of
Sure.
it is that you really need to have the flexibility to build around the enterprise's policies, right?
Yep.
If they need certain things on their cloud environment or on premise, we have the flexibility to be able to do that.
Now, for the language industry, which is most of our listeners are from the language industry as well. So, FinSpector, that's your the application or the AI tool that you've built, monitors financial promotions across social media. That specific content is inherently multilingual. How does language variability affect your compliance from an AI perspective, and how do you solve for that? Let's say you're
Mm.
monitoring specifically in Europe. I mean, it's not strange to say that Europe has, like, I don't know, multitude of languages, and one application cannot just cover English. It has to cover
Mm.
all the other languages that are being, if you're just speaking at a Europe level, but most applications now are deployed globally anyway. So
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I'm going to actually make it sound slightly more challenging than that as well, because when you're dealing with financial promotions, you're actually dealing with local, perhaps multiple local sets of regulations that apply to that geography and that industry as well, right? So not only we have a multilingual problem, we also have a multi-jurisdiction problem, and those systems get really complicated. So I think it really, I mean, this is not a promotion for FinSpector specifically, but if you're using systems for that type of, let's say, monitoring and risk management, it's really important to think about whether that helps with your sort of growth plans in terms of geography and jurisdictions and where you're active and so on. That we where we are active in languages and let's say the jurisdictions regulatory wise where we do have the partnerships and the relationships to understand, that defines our growth path with the engagements that we have. So the reverse is true for the clients. When they speak to us, they do really want to, more often than not, understand what we do cover and what we don't.
now, the audience of this podcast are people generally running like language companies or language operation inside of large enterprises. You mentioned some of your stakeholders, DHL, etc. Those guys will have, and Nestle, they probably have language people running their internal communications, etc. The question that they're all wrestling with right now is, where does AI actually fit in their workflow, and where does it not? And first, what do you say to this group? But more importantly, for the people that they're looking at this and they're saying there are certain steps in the process, absolutely, I need to have a human take a look at it. And I always say on this channel, like, the technology that we're dealing with, it is self-learning. It is improving on a day-to-day basis. And most of these statements that people are putting it out there right now has a very short expiry date to it. Taking a look at as we started this conversation, taking a look at an existing workflow and try to overlay on top of it, where does it fit, where does it not? Is this still the right logic to approach this?
I I think there is and I hear this phrase a lot as well, that people want human in the loop. Right, the human in the loop is a framework that's important to understand, but it started increasingly in conversation being used as human is the gateway. AI produces, and human is the gateway, and that is not human in the loop. That's just human as the door that you need to go through, and that kind of, to me, it typically ends up being just overloaded people, people who don't really want to deal with so much AI garbage that comes out of it. You're optimizing for completely different things. So I think this framing of human needs to look at it at all times, sure, but what are you actually trying to achieve, right? What are the parts of the system, or the, let's say, the content or the output that you put out in the world, that the human does need to look at it? And when the human does look at it, what are they actually really looking at, and which part of the value is the highest from what they're trying to do? Is it that they're trying to manage the risk, or define the tone, or localize it, or what it may be? So the process, the system,
or could be afraid of change, perhaps.
Could be afraid. Yes, absolutely. So the system, yeah, as you said, the system needs to be looked at as what are you trying to do, and which part of it is the human most important, and their skills are the most valuable. We can try to optimize around that, right? But trying to kind of put human as the gateway, that just leads to unhappy people.
You recently wrote that you can engineer more serendipity with AI, but you cannot replace it. What does that mean?
Oh, well, it's this.
I don't know if you remember that, but
yeah, no, I do remember that. I wish I remembered what made me think of that. No, you're right. I think there is a benefit to getting in a room. I think there is a benefit to kind of sitting down and trying to explore ideas together. There's a benefit in going in the playground and playing together as well. Now we do internally, and in some organizations we help them do this as well. We internally try to have as much shared intelligence in workflows as possible, right? As much kind of like identification of potential opportunities or potential help we may be able to give to each other. We try to do that, but that to me is going to be table stakes. And what is most important is that you still have the human element of getting in a room and thinking about stuff. That's or going out there in the world and meeting new people and so on. So that's the serendipity that you can engineer, but you can't entirely replace it.
As we get closer here to the end of our conversation, I have one question for you, and then I'll ask you a few closing questions and comments. If you could go back and tell yourself one thing before you started GOODFOLIO, what would it be?
I would, tell myself that the world is going to move a lot quicker than even you think it's going to move. I needed to learn that the quick way. And I thought I knew that, but I didn't. It can move extremely quickly.
And what's next for GOODFOLIO? What's the future like?
Good question. I mean, I think we've done a lot of foundational work over the last few years, and we've been sort of fortunate enough to be in the position that we are in now. It's kind of multiple proof points. An aggressive growth phase is what's in our future. We do think that there is a differentiated story and a differentiated way of doing things that we want to put out there in the world. And I think, frankly, there is enough going on that is bad AI that there's got to be some space for
bad AI. Yeah. I'm just imagining a robot and you're slapping him around and saying bad AI, bad
AI. So I can see myself doing that in a couple of years. No, I mean, as simple language sometimes help drive sort of internal alignment for us. But so there's really a space for what we're trying to do, and is trying to establish that that sort of uniqueness and differentiated part of what we do in the marketplace is what we're focused on.
Absolutely. So I want to thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it. Did I capture everything you wanted to cover today?
Yeah, more than captured. Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. It's been a really, really exciting conversation.
And I want to thank you for joining me on this conversation today. And you're welcome back anytime you wish to come back for an update on GOODFOLIO or whatever project that you have in mind. Would love to host you again.
Thank you very much.
Any last comments before I close it off?
I mean, I think that just the only thing I would say, I think, is that there is a lot of sort of negativity and despair around what the AI is doing, and I think we have a certain level of control over where that destiny goes as well. So, yeah, but all our responsibilities to work towards a more hopeful future of AI.
I really appreciate you joining me today, Omid, and this has been genuinely useful conversation. The gap between what AI promised and what it actually delivered inside a real organization, something that every person is listening is navigating right now. Most of our listeners are navigating through this. And you've given us a framework of thinking about how it goes and to take it beyond what usual talking points are. We actually dug deeper into the conversation of how this thing should roll out. How AI should roll out at a scale, given the governance that we need to put in place. Think about it from an enterprise perspective. What processes can it work with? What processes need to be replaced, etc. Because technology opened a brand new horizon for us. And for everyone listening right now, GOODFOLIO is at goodfolio.com. That's the website for the company. And you can find Omid on LinkedIn. He's connected to me as well. And if you need to reach out to Omid and you can't find him, just connect with me or reach out to me and I'll make an introduction. No problem. And I highly recommend GOODFOLIO just to check them out and take a look at what they offer and see if they can help you in your AI deployment as well. As always, I want to thank you all for being part of the Localization Fireside Chat. If this episode was useful to you, if you don't mind sharing it with someone who is trying to make AI actually work, and I'll see you at the next episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.